Dr. Benishek, you recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome. Actually, I want to do a little more follow-up on what Mr. Wiedemann had to say. I think all of us here would like to know what's going on with this Gulf War syndrome a lot better. And, a physician doesn't like a vague diagnosis. All right, you want to be able to do a blood test and then yes or no, right? We don't have that here. And I think the point that he made is that more research needs to be done is the critical one here. And do you all, are any of you all aware of what's going on in that department? Mr. Wiedemann, you mentioned specifically the epidemiology studies that you say haven't been done. What is going on in the research of this Gulf War syndrome?
The most useful research that's going on today is CDRMP, the congressionally directed medical research program. And the reason for that is that research and development at VA simply wasn't concentrating on research that would lead anywhere. And if, in fact, they committed monies at all, it's real. If you decide you want to find nothing and you work really hard at it, the likelihood is you're going to find nothing. And that's exactly what VA has done here and in regard to other generations, both those who served in the recent wars as well as Vietnam. What Institute of Medicine has repeatedly, time and time and time again, is urged VA and DOD to start to mine the mountain ranges of data they have on all of us, but they don't do it. And that's how you could really start to make a difference. Let me just give you one example from Vietnam vets. Some of the most useful research that's been done was not directed from Washington, was not funded by Washington. It was individual clinicians in the field who, were able to hustle some graduate students and did epidemiological work of Vietnam veterans who had served in Vietnam or Vietnam veterans who had not served in Vietnam and who was more likely to have prostate cancer, as an example. That's how we found out that prostate cancer among those who served in country was almost 3 times that of the era vets. That kind of work is simply not being done by VA for any generation as a systematic thing.
I appreciate your answer, but I just want to get to a couple more items. Is there currently a registry for people that complain of Gulf War syndrome symptoms?
Yes, there currently is a registry program.
I don't understand. Would you object personally to extending the dates of eligibility for this in view of the fact that there's a lot of vagueness to the diagnosis here, and that more time needs to be, I think more research needs to be done, and to have this cutoff date be an issue for people when there's so much uncertainty as to what the real etiology is. I mean, it could be that there's some, bacteria like TB or something that has just not been found. That could be, really the answer here. And I don't know what it is, but there's a lot of uncertainty.
I have no personal objection. We have to go through the rulemaking process. But the reason why we did the 5-year delimiting dates was because of that uncertainty in the medicine and the science. So that still exists today. So if that reassures you.
Are there cutoff dates to is this a common thing that VA does, to cut off dates for application for eligibility?
The statute that we're dealing with here gives the secretary and authority to establish this particular cutoff date.
Does anyone else from the VSOs want to comment on what's going on? Mr. Morosky?
Sir, we absolutely agree that more research is warranted here. Right now, the only presumptive disorders for Gulf War illness are either certain infectious diseases or you have this chronic multi-symptom unexplained medical illness. If under that, there are a lot of diagnoses, as I explained earlier, that come out of those symptoms. What we would like to see research is whether or not those diagnoses that are commonly given for those symptoms ought to be presumptive conditions in and of themselves. So if the gastrointestinal problems are being diagnosed as IBS, maybe IBS should also be a presumptive condition, which would lead to fewer denials, but that's what research would be for.
Mr. McClenchon seemed to indicate that a lot of the people were denied the undiagnosed disability, but were given a diagnosed disability. Is that the case? Or maybe I better take that for the record since I'm obviously running over time. But if you could give me the percentage of those numbers for the record, I'd like to know that.
With respect to that, when the first Gulf War veterans returned from the Gulf and started complaining of multiple symptoms for which a diagnosis could not be established, VA had no way to compensate them because our statutory authority is to provide compensation for disability resulting from injury or disease. So we worked with Congress, with congressional staff, and that resulted in the 1994 legislation that created Gulf War presumptions and the whole Gulf War process.
Mr. Fuller, we're going to interrupt you. The time is out, but if you'll put that for the written record, we'd appreciate that.